talking about is going through healing process of how much involvement as a facilitator. Uh, if I'm working with that person's energy, am I is that of like their highest alignment for them to walk through their own healing process, or I'm rather am I interfering with their healing process by me working directly with their energy, even with their permission?
Yeah. And I don't think that you're necessarily interfering with their healing process because there's many stages to it. So like the first stage, as I said earlier, it's all about really helping them to understand what's possible.
Mm-hmm.
The second stage is then leading them through what's possible, kind of helping them get into it. So how did I actually do what we did in our first session? This is how I did it. Being free with your information and energy is beautiful because then you open space for more information and energy.
Mm-hmm.
And you've been teaching, so you understand that when you teach something, you're actually learning more than what you're teaching them. It's like you get a new level of it every time that you teach
Yes.
it, and it's a beautiful experience. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the gift of being a teacher, is that we have the ability then to do that. It takes us into three paths. Do you remember the three paths from back in class a long time ago?
What the only thing that comes to mind is being in a state of suffering, and then you're like the in between state, and then you go into service, and then you go into alchemy, I
Yes.
believe.
And then there's the Grand Alchemist,
Yes.
which is the completion of all. So at first we have to suffer,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's part of the process. Is like to gain experience, we learn through suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And as we move forward from suffering, we move into service, right?
Mm-hmm.
But first we have to do the interim.
Mm-hmm.
And the interim that you were talking about. So it's like we're suffering and we're also being of service, but we're starting to understand the difference between the two.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually we start to bridge into alchemy, and we're still in service and we're in alchemy. So we're still going through our own issues, but we're actually changing them and transmuting them in other people, which are what? There are reflections, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if there are reflections and we're transmuting it in them, what are we doing in ourselves?
Reflecting back to us for us to go through our own healing process.
But we're getting it from what? A different perspective.
From a higher level source.
Exactly. So what does that mean? More awareness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're all about. What is healing? Healing is gaining the awareness to see through the illusion. And the illusion is what? The trauma and the drama. So all drama and all trauma are issues of illusion. What does that mean to us? That means that any time that we feel that we're in trauma or that we're in drama, that we are in the illusion. We are caught up in that space of illusion. So all we have to do is come back. It's earlier like what we were talking about over dinner was the light of God. If we're in the light of God, then we're in truth. Everything else, all the illusion melts away. And that's kind of what we have to show our clients, is by being the light of truth for them as a reflection, being in that light of God, what are we doing for them? We're allowing them to see the potential of what's possible.
Mm-hmm.
So as a healer, we're really just holding space for potentials. That's really what it is. We come from a higher awareness than them, which is the reason they came to us in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just hold space for potentials. So they come into our classroom environment, learn what they need to learn, and they take it out and they either apply it or they don't apply it. But it's not up to us to push it on them. Now what you were saying about the levels at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
At the beginning, we work with them very intensely, and we do a lot of the work for them. That's part of the law of responsibility, as I was saying earlier.
Mm-hmm.
It's important that we do that, because they don't have access to that energy, to this awareness. And unless we give it to them at first, they're never going to be able to have access to it. So once they've gotten to the point where they can like start to actually have a connection to source, because in this world our source connection is like broken in all kinds of ways every day. Every day we are heaped on more illusion, and we lose who we are. So once people start to find who they are, then they have the power to actually make changes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we do as facilitators. We hold that space for them to make those changes. And then we teach them how to make those changes. And then they go out and they start to teach other people how to make those changes. But first they do the same thing. They show them how to make those changes. Then they teach them. Do you see how it works?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and to get back to the question I asked before we started taping, there's a number of times where, as a facilitator, all I'm doing is I am showing them the potentiality.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of, especially the people who've been walking through their own healing process for some time, and they not only trust me, but they trust in themselves, can really do a lot without me having any intervention.
Exactly.
There's other times where I have someone who's maybe not at that point where they're really trusting their own inner source, or there may be a particular issue that's coming up that has such a strong charge that I've found the easiest way to facilitate the process is to actually start working with their energy, making sure that I'm not depriving them of their lessons or their consciousness of what's coming at it, but bringing out a state of a more balance or ease for them to move forward. Am I interfering with their process taking that step?
No.
Okay.
So if you have a water hose and it has holes in it, tons of them,
Mm-hmm.
and we turn it on, the majority of the water is going to get wasted, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what are you doing? What you're talking about is you're just kind of doctoring those holes so they get a pure source connection. They get the whole essence of who they are. And then when they have that horsepower, that essence of who they are, what are they able to do? Change things.
I see.
So all you're doing is making them more efficient at changing things.
Yes.
You're not disempowering them. They're actually giving you their power so that you can assist them in remembering who they are. Are you taking their power? No, they're giving it to you so that you can actually do what's needed. This isn't in any way harming their process. At first, they need help receiving that. They need to connect to that. And once they know that they actually have more than what they believe they are,
Mm-hmm.
then they can start to actually build themselves up.
Mm-hmm.
But at first, we have to show them what's possible. And sometimes that requires us doing the work for them at first.
That makes a lot of sense. Awesome.
Thank you very much for
Yeah.
the beautiful questions.
Yes. Thank you, Jason.
You're welcome.